Good morning. Good morning to the Honorable Madam Speaker, our Prime Minister, Honorable John Briceño, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Patrick Fauber, Honorable Members of the House, invited guests, and media houses. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let your light of your divine wisdom direct their plans and endeavors so that with your help, we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in union and in peace, which the world itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to that eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Deputy Clerk, can you kindly administer the oath of allegiance to the new member?
I, Elvia Vega Samos, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability, discharge my duties as a member of the House of Representatives, and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection, or ill will, so help me God.
Madam Speaker, could you allow me just to make two very short statements? The Sophia volcano in northern St. Vincent erupted very powerfully this morning. On behalf of the government and people of Belize, I express our deepest concerns for the welfare of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Once we receive the damage assessment from the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we will determine how we will support the recovery and rebuilding efforts. As of 9 a.m. Belize time, thank God, there has been no loss of life reported. In the meantime, we ask our Belizeans to pray for the safety and welfare of our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent. I'd also like to make another statement, Madam Speaker. This morning, we received the very sad news of the passing of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. On behalf of the government and people of Belize, I offer our deepest sympathies to Her Majesty the Queen. She and her family are in our collective prayers. The Duke of Edinburgh lived a full life. May he now find eternal rest. I'm also instructing the government that all flags be flown at half-mast. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. Good morning, honorable members. Welcome to the Chambers, member for Corozal Bay. Since we last met in these chambers, the country has embarked on a countrywide vaccination program with over approximately 24,000 Belizeans to date being vaccinated. Belize, as of yesterday, is reporting 41 active cases and unfortunately a total of 318 deaths due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I say this, members, to remind ourselves that as we meet in chamber, we are very cognizant that we do so while still grappling with the pandemic. The National Assembly is very cognizant of this, and therefore we must continue to abide by the safety protocols at the National Assembly until further notice by our public health officials. Therefore, I extend my gratitude to the Prime Minister of Belize, member for Orange Walk Central, and the Leader of Opposition, member for Colette Division, under no objection after I consulted with them on the request to have the 3 family members of the member for Corozal Bay present to have witnessed her swearing in this morning. This was a one-off exception, members, as the public galleries remain closed to the proceedings of Parliament. I also take this opportunity to inform members that the Assembly has an obligation to work towards the improvement of Parliament, both for the benefit of parliamentarians and for the wider public at large. And we must do this as it is on behalf of their business that we meet. To this end, members, we are reminded of the technical assistance program that was embarked on last year with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Some, if not all of you by now, including the upper chamber, the Senate, would have received some save-the-date notices for the post-election seminar series that will be held May 3rd, 5th, and 7th. You have already benefited from one of the activities under this program, which was the Parliamentarian Handbook, which was delivered to all on the occasion of the new Parliament. While that still needs further strengthening, it is a very good first start for parliamentarians. In addition to the post-election seminar series, which we do encourage full participation as best as possible, it is intended for newly elected parliamentarians. However, there are 3 other activities I'd like to bring your attention and for you to take note of as of today, as you will be getting notices from the Office of the Clerk regarding them. Working through subcommittees of both the House and the Senate, we will be working on a draft code of conduct. We will be working on revising and updating the standing orders, and we will also be doing a technical review of the operation and administration of Parliament. In addition to this, there will be a workshop specifically geared for women in Parliament, as well as public engagement. With both the Senate and the House having now 4 women in Parliament, it was determined that this should be a separate activity, as it is the most either chamber has had at any one time. Members, this is much needed work for the Parliament, but it will go to naught without your support and your commitment to participate. This will inure to the benefit of members of Parliament, to the public, and of course to the staff of the National Assembly, by ensuring that the Parliament is more efficient, more effective, accessible, and modernized. Your support and commitment would be truly appreciated when we send out the notices. Today, it is not lost on me that we conduct this meeting while our Caribbean sisters and brothers on the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are grappling not only with the pandemic, but now with the eruption of their Le Soufrière volcano. Our thoughts and prayers from the Parliament are extended to them. And finally, as the Prime Minister indicated earlier in his statement, the Parliament did receive the official news on the passing of His Royal Highness, the Queen's Consort, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. On behalf of the Parliament, we extend our condolences to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth and the royal family. Thank you for your attention to the notice today.
Papers.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table sessional papers number HR 9/1/13, draft estimates of revenue and expenditure for fiscal year 2021-2022, HR 10/1/13, the Social Investment Fund of Belize, financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2020 and 2019, and independent auditor's report. Number HR 11/1/13, the 20th annual report of the Ombudsman of Belize for the year ending 2020.
Honorable members, sessional paper number HR 9/1/13 is referred to the Committee of Supply for examination, consideration, and report. And sessional paper number HR 10/1/13 is ordered to lie on the table. Sessional paper number HR 11/1/13 is referred to the Ombudsman Reports Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Presentation of reports from Select Committee.
I recognize the Honorable Chairman of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee.
Madam Speaker. Hello. Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table sessional papers number HR 12/1/13, report from the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee on the amendment of standing orders of the House of Representatives Motion 2021, and number HR 13/1/13, report from the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee on the establishment of the National Assembly Staff Committee Motion 2021. Thank you.
Honorable members, those reports are ordered to lie on the table.
Introduction of bills.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to appropriate certain sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to appropriate certain sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022 be read a first time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to appropriate certain sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year March 31st, 2022.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, in moving the second reading of the General Revenue Appropriation 2021-2022 Bill 2021, I seek your indulgence to deliver the budget speech from the podium. I also ask your indulgence to take off my mask. It's all. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise to present government's estimate of revenues and expenditure for the fiscal year 2020, 2021, 2022, and to report on the performance of the national budget for the current fiscal year 2020, 2021. This is the first budget for the 5-year cycle 2021-2025. The first also for my administration coming to office as we did on the trust of a wave election on 11th November 2020. That extraordinary mandate was ratified by an almost unmatchable margin less than 4 months later in the municipal elections of March 3rd of this year. With just 31 additional votes in the mayoral race and 23 votes in the elections for a councillor in the twin towns of San Ignacio, Santa Elena, our party would have secured 67 of the 67 seats available instead of 65. Along with these historic endorsements have come immense responsibility, which obligates us to rise to the demands of the Constitution, our manifesto, and the national interest. And it is to that national interest that this revenue collection and spending process, the budget process, must do justice. That this budget presentation comes at a juncture of unparalleled national crisis is undisputable. Belize is facing her most severe economic, fiscal, and debt crisis. And though the health crisis caused by COVID-19 is currently in remission, with the virus's spread largely controlled, the recent resurgence that is being seen in Europe and closer to home in Antigua and Barbuda and elsewhere should caution us that our substantial progress can quickly be reversed. And Madam Speaker, I take the time out at this time to be able to recognize and to thank all our frontline workers who have gotten us to this point where we have less than 50 persons infected with the COVID-19 virus. To state the obvious, Madam Speaker, the virus is ever present. The risk to Belize and Belizeans remain real. We must remain vigilant. How we navigate through this extraordinary crisis, the extent to which discipline, sacrifice, and solidarity prevail, the efficacy of our home-craft medium-term economic and fiscal recovery plan will, in sum, determine the well-being of our people, the resiliency of the public finances, and the durability of the value of the Belizean dollar. It is worth noting that the amount required to meet the demands of our constituencies typically outpaces budget funding, even in normal times. The mismanagement and mess we inherited, however, has widened the gap between those two amounts to an almost unmanageable degree at the onset. Allow me to recognize the many contributors to this delicate consensus-building budget process, starting naturally with my cabinet and parliamentary colleagues. who have confronted this unprecedented national emergency with poise and patience. And I thank also the social partners with whom there have been genuine consultations. I acknowledge the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Belize Business Bureau, the agro-productive sector, the Council of Churches, the NGO community, and so many other organizations and groups that we met. I applaud the joint unions for their extensive contributions, as well as those many public officers whose execution of their duties had an impact in ways small and large upon the participatory exercise of composing this budget. When all is said and done, the national budget is really a budget about all the people, working people and business people, because from its birth to its burial, the national budget touches all Belizeans in some way or the other. And this budget, in its plain speak, realistic goals and honesty, will usher in a new time in our national development, and with an optimism that the shared sacrifices we make today will result in all of us being able to triumph tomorrow. Except for the opportunity to vote out the UDP government, 2020 is a year most Belizeans would rather forget. What was designated as the Chinese calendar, in the Chinese calendar, as the year of the rat, turned out to be the year of the black swan, with the onset of an unforeseeable, once in a century global health disaster. From this rolling public health come economic catastrophe, there would be no safe harbor. According to the IMF, the global economy shrunk by 3.5%. Central Americas fell by 6%. The tourism-dependent Caribbean economy shrunk by 10%. The output generated by Belize's economy, 40% of which was previously lifted by tourism's proportion, nosedived by 14%, a steeper fall than all except for 5 countries, 2 of which are fellow Caribbean tourism-dependent states. With an economy already firmly in recession, having contracted all of 2019, the pandemic quickly turned the UDP recession into a full-blown depression. In addition to the thousands unable to find work before COVID-19, 64,000 more Belizeans lost jobs. Thousands of businesses pivoted to emergency mode after a mandatory lockdown, and the government, hamstrung from years of incompetence, excessive borrowing, and distracted by a pre-election feeding frenzy, could do very little, except, of course, to borrow, and borrow more by none other than Mr. Barrow himself. I digress for just a moment to lament the loss of life caused by the COVID-19 virus. 319 Belizeans to date, a loss far more regrettable than the loss of livelihoods. We continue to mourn those fallen Belizeans who succumbed to COVID-19 and offer prayers for the comfort of their families and loved ones. On this side of the House, we grieve for our colleague and friend from Corozal Bay, the late David Dido Vega, who left us far too early. To the new representative from Corozal Bay, the Honorable Elvia Vega Samos, Dita's sister, we offer first our solidarity and, of course, our congratulations and full support. Madam Speaker, it is undeniable that the UDP administration turned over to my government an economy that was far worse than a mess. They turned over an economy that was in veritable tatters, a busted budget for this fiscal year that has required average borrowing of more than $1 million per day, a soaring level of unemployment that is afflicting 29% of the workforce, and a total public debt that's the 6th highest in the world. Not even those on this side of the House could have imagined these possibilities. The 6th most indebted nation, the 5th most severe depression of 2020, our status as one of only 13 countries on the planet that do not even appear in Transparency International's corruption index, hence leaving us without a ranking. That is the legacy of the UDP. This is the extent of the national decline which my administration begins to reverse with this, our first national budget proposal. As a prelude to revealing government's overall medium-term recovery plan, it is important to share some snapshots of the domestic economy as well as the financial sector. While the overall economic output fell by 14%, this drop was not uniform. Clearly, the service sector was hit hardest, with hotels and restaurants crashing by 60% and the yields in the overall tertiary sector dipping by 17%. Consequent to that fall, output in the secondary sector, where manufacturing and construction are recorded, fell, but not nearly as precipitously, with a decline of 1.8%. Sales of such products as flour and beer, which are tied to tourism, faltered, but electricity rebounded handsomely, rising by 15% year-on-year for 2020. The primary sector's outturn decreased by 2.4%, impacted largely by a 27% fall in fishing activities. Positively, agricultural output posted a positive performance, if just slightly, with a 0.5% increase, due largely to a rise in the revenue we earned from the sales of our southern staples, citrus and bananas. Some crisis markers, at least temporarily, moved in unexpected directions. For example, the balance of trade, balance of payments, and reserve position of the central bank. Imports fell for the year 24.5%, outpacing the fall in exports, and with remittances rising and profit repatriation falling, the balance of payment deficit narrowed from 9.3% of GDP to 6.9%. Government access to and rapid drawdown of borrowed funds expanded the import cover of the reserve position modestly from 4.1 months in 2019 to 5.2 months in 2020. Relatively speaking, the domestic financial system maintained its solid standing. Excess statutory liquidity totaled $420.3 million at the end of last year. Non-performing loans totaled 5.8%, and the weighted average lending rate stabilized at 8.5%. In its recent Article 4 statement, the IMF concluded that the banking system entered the pandemic with abundant liquidity and strong capital buffers, a rare positive assessment in an otherwise dire report by the fund. A commitment to retaining the strong fundamentals has not deterred the central bank from cushioning vulnerable borrowers. In fact, the regulator has recently extended the forbearance framework that allows commercial banks to extend flexible repayment terms for customers. Last April, the central bank had also lowered the statutory liquid asset and cash reserve requirements and adjusted selected provisioning protocols, all with the goal of softening the edges of the crisis for bank customers. As our recovery picks up steam, the levels of asset quality of non-performing loans and of bank capital will be closely supervised by the regulator. Madam Speaker, the projected outturn for the fiscal year ending 31st March 2021 is dismal. Despite our back-breaking efforts since assuming office to halt the flow, the red ink, no pun intended, by limiting spending to priority areas and eliminating waste. Total recurring revenues and grants are projected to fall by 28%, exactly twice the level of the overall economic contraction for 2020. I repeat, for emphasis, for every dollar government expected to collect, it actually collected 72 cents. And thus, friends, the actual amount that will be going into the nation's pocket is likely to be not the $1.239 billion that we expected to collect, but a considerably lower $899.6 million. Tax revenue derived from the major subcategories of income, profits, property, and international trade and transactions declined at a rate that, for the most part, mirrored this average drop of 28%. The exception being GST, which fell by 32%. Under the category of non-tax revenue, the fees collected for licenses fell by 52%, while the capital revenue report projects the sale of Crown lands to be substantially exceeded the budgeted amount. On the expenditure side, total spending fell by only 15%, far below the 28% drop in revenue. This is the crux of the exigency we face, and it cannot be overemphasized. The amount we have been collecting fell by a significant amount, almost a third of what we used to collect. But we've only advanced halfway in our efforts to reduce our spending to match the huge drop in what we earn. In other words, we've only moved halfway toward the point where we need to be, even before factoring in debt service and principal repayment. That's the point where every dollar we spend is what we actually have, a balanced budget. The halfway point we are trying to bridge is a precarious position, fraught with risk. In a figurative sense, our financial face mask in these COVID times is halfway between our nose and our chin. It's a dangerous level of risk exposure that must be addressed. The sectors in which total spending fell to levels lower than the amount budgeted included goods and services, with the amount spent on these two being clipped by 31%. pensions, which fell by 14%, subsidies and transfers, which were reduced by 31%, and debt service payments, which were reduced by 54%. This decrease in debt service spending, the most substantial reduction, reflects the capitalization of the superbond coupon payments, which was agreed to by bondholders in August of 2020. Notably, amidst the cuts and reductions in spending in various sectors, wages to public workers actually rose by $11 million, or 2.5%. Overall capital spending exceeded budgeted levels by 5%, rising to $294.8 million from a budgeted level of $281.7 million. In summary, overall, for every dollar government expected to spend, it actually spent 86 cents. The primary deficit and overall budget deficit are expected to be negative 8.51% of GDP and negative 10.21% of GDP, respectively, substantially exceeding the budgeted levels of 0.85% and 4.37%, respectively. In dollar terms, the last administration sought approval to borrow $253.7 million for this budget, but would actually have borrowed by fiscal year's end some $370 million. As a result of the capitalization of the superbond interest payment, that $370 million is a figure that is $53 million less than the amount of borrowing that would have been otherwise required. In other words, even without the superbond payment, the last UDP budget borrowed 46% more than was authorized by Parliament last March. For every dollar of UDP spending in the final year of that administration, a monstrous 31 cents was borrowed. And for every dollar spent under this budget, 54 cents, more than half, will have been directed to wages and pensions, 25 cents on capital projects, and 15 cents on payment for goods and services. Rather than curtailing borrowing as the debt levels rose, the last administration, I emphasize, ramped up the borrowing to levels that are simply beyond belief. In the fiscal year 2018-2019, budget borrowing represented 10 cents of every dollar of recurrent revenue. Then in financial year 2019-2020, that figure more than doubled, with 24 cents of each collected dollar being borrowed. And this year that just ended, 43 cents of each dollar of our country's revenue was borrowed. Can there be any doubt that the deluge of the UDP debt was deliberate, premeditated, and designated in equal parts to disguise the underlying decay of the public finances, to fund a pre-election orgy of hustling, and to sabotage their successors? Their disgraced brand of costume party politics, the short-sighted lack of concern for the next generation, has pushed all of us to the very edge of default, the erosion of our exchange rate, and national disgrace. Turning now to the public debt. For purposes of full disclosure and for the record, Let me elaborate on this most important subject of public debt. For the last 13 years, during 3 UDP administrations, our country has been hurtling towards a debt crisis, heedless to the grave perils of overborrowing, impervious to the generational gap poverty trap that unsustainable public debt lays for our people. Except for the opposition, very few sounded the alarm, even as the then government was obviously borrowing to fund regular wages, wage increases, and increments. The scale of just how much the government owes today is breathtaking. The equivalent of $10,000 for every man, woman, and child. $50,000 in debt for each family of 5. The inconceivable total sum of $4.2 billion. That's the number 4. That's the number 4, followed by 9 digits. For the average Belizean citizen whose annual income under the UDP withered to $5,800, a level not seen since 1992. Such unearthly indebtedness is unconscionable. For the nation state of Belize, this magnitude of public debt, some 130% of the country's entire annual economic output, places us, as I indicated earlier, as the 6th most indebted country in the world. Of all countries, only Japan, Greece, Venezuela, the Sudan, and Lebanon have a higher public debt ratio than Belize. Like a member of a family who returns home to discover that his or her sibling who was in charge of handling the family finances has not only squandered the savings, but owes every bank and loan shark in town, my administration took office inheriting a public debt position that has us teetering on the brink of sovereign delinquency, or assets mortgaged or sold, or precious currency pegged perilously at risk. As it now towers over us, here is a breakdown of the public debt. $872 million is owed to our bilateral lenders, 55% of which was borrowed under the Petro-Caribe program with Venezuela, while 34% of this amount is owed to the Republic of China and Taiwan, and the small remainder to other friendly countries. $794 million is owed to multilateral lenders, with 36% owed each to the Inter-American Development Bank and the Caribbean Development Bank, 17% to OPEC, 7% to the World Bank, and the balance to international financial institutions such as CABEI and the EIB. $1.168 billion is owed to external commercial creditors, 97% of which represent the so-called super bond, while the remaining $60 million is a domestic US dollar bond issued by the central bank in 2020. And finally, some $1.35 billion is owed to domestic creditors. The largest portion, about $561 million, or 41%, is owed to the Central Bank of Belize, while domestic banks are owed some 28% of government's local debt stock. At present, therefore, 2/3 of Belize's public debt, approximately $2.8 billion, represents external loans that must be repaid with foreign currency. The average interest rate on external debt is 4.2%, and on domestic debt is 2.7%. Looking back, history will not be kind to those who maxed out the national credit card. It is no exaggeration to posit that the highest point in our country is no longer the Victoria Peak. Rather, the highest point is now at the top of this debt mountain the UDP left for us to scale. Looking forward, this government has assigned the highest priority to debt sustainability with a goal of reducing the debt to GDP ratio to 85% by 2025 and to below 70% by 2030. To achieve this ambitious and necessary goal, my administration is already taking the following steps. First, a debt management unit comprised of external and domestic advisors with participation at the highest levels of the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Belize has been mobilized. During the recent Article 4 discussions with the IMF, the unit outlined the debt management elements of government's medium-term recovery plan, laying out its roadmap for achieving sustainability and for restoring prudence to the public debt, some of which I will now highlight. Second, negotiations to restructure the super bond has commenced. In good faith, Belize invited the formation of a creditor committee on 19th March and proposed new terms for this obligation, which at $556.5 million US represents 28% of outstanding overall debt and 40% of external debt. More importantly, the current interest payments set at a coupon rate of 4.9375% or $55 million annually constitute 45 cents of every dollar budgeted for debt service in the approved budget for financial year 2020-2021. In the proposed budget for financial year 2021-2022, there is a provision for the payment of a coupon consistent with the offer we have made to bondholders. The next coupon is due on 20th May 2021, by which time I would expect that negotiations would have been concluded. Last year, as leader of the opposition, I expressed the view that capitalizing this year's interest payments, thereby increasing the amount of debt outstanding, was a self-defeating approach. To extend and to pretend, as our predecessors did on 3 occasions during their debt negotiations in 2013 and 2017, and with last year's capitalization, is, in our considered opinion, both unwise and unviable. This was also the unanimous verdict of a recent debt sustainability analysis conducted by the IMF. Therefore, securing near-term cash flow relief as well as overall principal reduction is the unambiguous basis upon which our current negotiations must, in our view, climax. Third, an active review is ongoing with regard to other classes of public debt, with the exception of the already concessionary multilateral loans, so as to carve out for the country some short-term fiscal space, whether by means of write-offs, payment deferments, coupon reduction, or discounted buyouts. And fourth, government's gross financing needs, the amount of financing support required over the next 5 years, with the construct of our active recovery plan, is projected to be about $1 billion. Diligent debt management will ensure this deficit funding is sourced on optimal terms. Already, with the support of our exceptionally ally, the Republic of China on Taiwan, a new four-year memorandum of understanding has been formalized between our two countries, guaranteeing critical grant and loan bridge support, commencing with a first payment of $80 million for this fiscal year. Now let me quote the words of the IMF in its recent Article 4 concluding statement. The key policy imperative for Belize is to restore public debt sustainability and strengthen the currency peg. This recommendation by the IMF could just as well have been taken from our government's home-crafted recovery plan. In the same fashion that Belizean families and businesses must be discerning in managing debt, borrowing only as a last resort and for the most urgent purposes, restricting themselves to loan amounts that can be comfortably be paid back and to terms they can meet, and most crucially, leaving some room to borrow when the inevitable emergencies arise, so too must the government approach its constitutional privilege to borrow in the name of its citizens. In short, Madam Speaker, public debt must be sustainable and it must be managed for the public good. Madam Speaker, before outlining the broad contours of the new budget that I tabled today, I wish to outline the rationale and the framework for the wider medium-term recovery plan. Erroneously, in some quarters have been suggested, perhaps assumed, that the salary adjustment is the sole pillar upon which the fiscal recovery rests. Nothing could be further from the truth. The salary adjustment is necessary, but it is no fiscal elixir. That alone is far from sufficient to reverse the public finance morass left behind by the last UDP administration. Painful as it truly is, the $60 million in salary adjustments and the $20 million foregone for increments and allowances in this budget is one step in the hard slog back to fiscal finesse. A correlative to this cost curtailment step is a drastic reduction in this budget of spending on goods and services, which is being slashed by $78 million compared to the previous budget. A second step is a reduction in interest payments, which for this budget is being programmed at some $53 million less than what was allotted for the previous fiscal year. I've already addressed the subject of public debt management in a substantial fashion earlier in my presentation. The third step must be the augmentation of revenues. As government and the joint unions have agreed, this can be achieved first by sparing no effort to collect current taxes from all sources from whom such taxes are due, and simultaneously by ensuring that legitimate outstanding taxes are recovered immediately. Whether current tariffs will suffice without the need for incremental revenue measures will depend on those who pay and those who collect. To those who evade the tax system, thereby imposing a disproportionate burden on the rest, I signal today, without hesitation, that the state's enforcement agencies will thereafter adopt a muscular approach to revenue collection and enforcement. As a fourth and final step, government and all stakeholders, especially the public service and the private sector, must together seed and reap higher, more equitable economic growth. enabling investment, both domestic and foreign, is of the highest priority for this administration, and I will outline later this morning some specific structural reforms we will adopt so as to foster the conditions for higher growth. These four essentials form a carefully calibrated composite for our recovery plan: spending reductions, revenue enhancements, comprehensive debt restructuring, and above-average economic expansion, all intertwined to underpin a renaissance of sturdy public finances. I'm compelled to signal one other major imperative of our recovery plan, and that is the urgent need for public pension reform. Non-contributory pension payments in the budget have neared $100 million for a single year. That level of spending is simply untenable. When we left office in 2008, the annual cost of pensions was $38 million. Today, that has virtually tripled. Government must move now to transform the public pension scheme to a contributory structure, either standing on its own with payments from both employer and beneficiary, or a merger of the public pension program and the social security system. To be completely clear, this recovery plan is not without its downside risk. Some risks recognizable as being so grave as to imperil the plan itself. If, for example, some variant of COVID-19 defies the vaccine campaign and tourism fails to gradually recover, or if hurricanes, floods, or droughts return in the near term to extract another substantial economic toll, then all bets would be off and a more aggressive recovery program would be required. For this year, the IMF forecasts only a modest GDP rebound of 1.9%, with a steep upswing of 6.4% projected for 2022. Their prediction is that a return to pre-COVID economic activity will not occur until financial year 2024-2025 period. While we are more optimistic, contingency plans will be at the ready in the event that the rebound is protracted. I am confident, though, that if we all adhere to the recovery plan, if we achieve our revenue and spending targets, if we restructure and reprofile the public debt, and if we can catalyze sustained economic expansion, together as a nation, we would have averted default and the depreciation of our dollar. We would have protected thousands of public sector jobs and retained our fiscal sovereignty. In subsequent years, once an economic recovery takes firm root, once the debt is on a sustainable footing and primary surpluses are being achieved, then increments can be restored and targeted spending, particularly on the more ambitious goals of Plan Belize, can expand. As Prime Minister, I control the behavior of neither virus nor the climate. What I propose, what we are elected to coordinate, is a credible time-bound recovery plan. Renewal, reform, and rebound are the lodestars of this administration. Madam Speaker, assembling any budget is always a high-wire balancing act. There are limited funds and virtually unlimited calls for spending. Assembling a budget in the midst of a pandemic and economic depression is excessively rigorous if, as if instead insisted, we conform to these general requirements. First, that the budget moves the economy decisively to a sustainable foundation so that we can reduce the deficit and thus lower the need for borrowing. These financial year 2021-2022 forecasts of revenues and expenditures are tethered to reality, not to political showmanship. And this is the belt tightening that is necessary, I reiterate, because of the UDP mess that we inherited. Second, that the adjustments made in the movement towards a balanced budget are spread as evenly as possible and are shared equitably so that no one sector or group of people suffers disproportionate pain. Thus, it will be evident that reductions are being made to all recurrent spending lines, to wages, to goods and services, to transfers and subsidies, and to debt servicing payments, as in as tolerable proportions as possible. Third, the capital investments, both Capital 2 and Capital 3 outlays, be preserved and where feasible, augmented, since this category represents the only form of stimulus that government can afford at this time. Public spending represents 39.2% of national output, making our capital investment program the single leading indirect provider of private sector jobs, in addition to the employment of those who are directly on the public payroll, a payroll that is also the single largest in the economy. And fourth, that priority be given to spending in the areas of health, poverty mitigation, education, citizen security, rural development, and of course, the maintenance and development of the infrastructure of our national logistics network. Giving everyone a fair shot at prosperity, more so because of the inequities in society that are the extant crisis that compounded, is our urgent duty. A recent regional study has illustrated that failing to do this will rise polarization, erode trust in government, or cause social unrest. Upon this principal scaffolding, we proceeded to build the budget for this fiscal year, which projects total revenues and grants of $1.03 billion, an increase of 14.5% compared to the projected outturn of fiscal year 2020-2021. Of recurrent tax revenues, $247.5 million will come from income and profits, $6.4 million from property, $137.7 million from international trade and transactions, and $484.7 million from the goods and services. Non-tax revenue will total $81 million. The two notable line items being royalties, forecasted at $29.4 million, and levies collected by ministries, forecasted to be $32.6 million. Capital revenues are projected to total $5.2 million. Grants will total $67.4 million. The principal contributors being the Republic of China on Taiwan at $20 million, and the UK government through the Caribbean Investment Fund at $22.5 million. Overall expenditure will total $1.204 billion, of which recurrent spending represents $905.9 million and capital spending $298.6 million. Of recurrent spending, $413.7 million will be on wages, $91 million on pensions and ex gratia payments, $175.5 million on goods and services, $68.4 million for debt servicing. I wish to underline the fact that every category of spending will fall compared to last year's budget. On the capital spending side, total investments will be $298.6 million. At the bottom line is our primary budget balance, which is simply the difference between what you earn and what you spend before interest charges, and it is the key measure of sustainability. For this year, the primary balance will be a negative 2.91% of GDP, or $97.99 million, which is less than half of last year's 8.12% deficit. The overall deficit is projected at 4.93% of GDP, or $166.43 million. And when the $109.3 million in amortization is added to this number, the level of financing required for this year is 8.4% of GDP, or $275.6 million. This financing will be sourced from the following: $186.2 million from our development partners on concessional terms, and $89.4 million from domestic sources. In this budget, the salaries and pensions of public employees will constitute 64 cents of every dollar collected by government. On the cost attendant to their work, such as utilities, fuel, travel, etc., accounts for another 18 cents of each dollar. That leaves just 18 cents of recurrent revenue, some $176 million, to make all our interest payments that are due on the $4.2 billion of accumulated debt, to fund all capital investment programs, and to settle principal repayments. Rebuilding the edifice of the public finances on solid rock means that government has to borrow less each year, starting now with a reduction of almost 2% of GDP in overall financing for this budget. And this administration will have an unwavering commitment to a balanced budget at the primary level for fiscal year 2022-2023, with the further aim to lift that primary to about 2% the following year, and by fiscal year 2025-2026, to carry forward a primary surplus of no less than 3% of GDP. I am confident that these ambitious targets are attainable because we did it before. The last two PUP budgets for fiscal year 2006-2007 and 2007-2008 featured primary surpluses of 3.85% and 3.25% respectively. We can do it again. Before elaborating on the impacts of the new budget, I must restate how critical the role of private enterprise will be to the overall prospects of recovery. Recognizing this, government recently amended the Central Bank of Belize Act to allow for an earmarked line of liquidity to support business continuity and recovery. I can now confirm that the Central Bank will shortly launch the COVID-19 Emergency Business Financing Program to provide low-cost liquidity to small, medium, and large enterprises. Funding will be laser-focused on the businesses that address the economy's two pressing priorities: unemployment and foreign exchange earnings. The $50 million facility, innovatively designed to share underlying risk with participating financial institutions and funded through a special purpose vehicle that will allow individual and institutional investor participation, will extend liquidity to eligible enterprises at a cost of 5% for 5 years, with supportive repayment moratoriums for both interest and principal. Transparent and based on proper risk management assessment, with a loan ceiling for each category of borrower, this program will complement the credit products of the domestic banks and credit unions, amplifying job and foreign currency creation. While we cannot foretell the facility's success, if the available funds are distributed evenly across all three categories of prospective borrowers, there is the potential to impact 200 businesses and thousands of workers. Madam Speaker, during the upcoming debate scheduled for April 22nd and 23rd, I am certain that my colleagues will unwrap the innards of the budget, ministry by ministry. Without detracting from their thunder, I would wish to accentuate the benefits that this budget projects. This budget will preserve employment for 15,000 public servants, 4,900 of whom contribute to domestic and border security, while another 3,500 serve our over 100,000 students throughout the education system, and the other 6,600 are on duty across the multiple departments and agencies of the national government. In a sense, these 15,000 public servants have 405,000 full-time customers, those who are the other citizens of Belize, as well as the many thousands of part-time customers, those who reside invest in and visit Belize. Their work, paid for by all taxpayers through the appropriations in this budget, vivifies the state, enabling the quality of life and many conveniences that all Belizeans share. This administration has resisted retrenchment and protected the wages of those earning up to $12,000 per year. Thus, no one earning $250 a week or less will face a salary cut, thereby ensuring that no government employee will fall below the $5 an hour minimum wage. The proceeds of this budget will service our national debt, both interest and principal repayment, presuming that the new terms will be agreed upon for the super bond. To address the principal priorities I cited earlier as the bedrock of this budget, there are just a few of the related capital spending considerations. $15 million for the continued battle against COVID-19, including testing, personal protective gear, critical care supplies, and so forth. $10 million for the 238,800 additional vaccines to be acquired on a discounted terms through the COVAX facility. You see, Madam Speaker, we know that an effective vaccine policy is indeed good economic policy. $3 million for the ongoing food assistance program, $60 million for the coastal and Caracol highways, $5.3 million for the new housing programs and low-cost housing support. This in partial fulfillment of Plan Belize. A $3 million for improvements to sugar roads and other agricultural roads, and so that our goods can go from farm to table. $18 million for the ongoing restoration of the Philip Golson Highway, because safety matters. $16.5 million combined for improving education delivery and quality and delivery, and for DigiLearn, because we believe in our plan to develop an educated nation. $5 million for upgrading our streets and drains nationally, with special allocations for rural and village roads. $12 million for climate vulnerability reduction initiatives. $17.5 million for ongoing restoration of the George Price Highway. $5.5 million for community-based projects executed by SIF and BNTF to improve rural living. $6 million for various national security initiatives, as well as for road safety programs. $7 million for improvement to the tax collection system, so that tax evasion and underpayments can be substantially reduced. $4 million to extend the solid waste management network. $4.6 million for the new passport system. And more than $100 million in additional capital investments designated to foster growth and efficiency, to alleviate the conditions of poverty, and to advance what the eminent labor economist and author Richard Layard labeled life satisfaction. All this is in keeping with our promise to build a Belize that works for everyone. Todos ganamos. The well-being of all citizens, which this budget strives to engender, will, as Layard said, recently wrote, eventually become totally accepted as a standard way of evaluating social policies and budget priorities. Tackling this budget, it is important to note, was carried out in a straitjacket because of our predecessors' proclivity to extravagance, which led them to choose pavements over people and roads over relief. How else could the UDP justify committing the government to $500 million, $520 million on contracts for just 5 roadways, the Caracol, Sarteneja, and coastal roads, and the George Price and Philip Golson highways? $520 million is the equivalent of 4 years of average capital spending, leaving us with little discretionary space for anything else. No space for low-income housing or poverty relief, or their vaunted pantry, or skills training, or rural development, or stimulus, or anything else. While in opposition, we warned that people cannot eat streets and roads, nor can $500 million on roads ease the pain of poverty or a pandemic. Yet we must remain committed to a progressive agenda. We must, even in these lean days, seek ways to fulfill, even partially, our commitments to Plan Belize. In this short time in government, we have learned that if we want to leave the crisis behind, it is necessary to stop thinking of economic and social policies as two separate entities. We need not only to invest more in social protection and public goods and services, but also to involve the private sector and civil society. That is, businesses, civil society organizations, and citizens in this effort. Through the Social Investment Fund, this organization that invests especially in the rural areas of our country, we have and will continue to provide for one of the most vulnerable sectors of our population. This year, we will continue our investment through the Basic Needs Trust Fund and the Caribbean Development Bank in potable water systems and help posts in several villages that are still lacking these basic human rights. SIF, through the BNTF-10, will also continue to invest in schools for our children in the rural communities. More schools in several villages will be built, expanded, and retrofitted to ensure that we create a suitable environment to develop the educational opportunities for our children while building the foundation of a skilled labor force. Investment in projects that decrease our vulnerability to climate change will also continue to be a priority for this government. Through the international financial institutions, the IFIs, and especially through the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, soft loans, and more so grants are actively and aggressively pursued at the local and the municipal and national levels to address the climate vulnerabilities of coastal communities and waterways for the most part. Also, the agriculture sector will be assisted with these grants and loan projects already underway, with institutional strengthening and financial assistance to adapt to the climatic changes and shifting weather patterns. Through my office, we will continue to support and bolster the effectiveness of two special programs, the National AIDS Commission and Restore Belize, that directly work with two very vulnerable and often overlooked sectors of our communities. The at-risk young men and girls that daily populate our prison is a sector of our community that needs special attention. Presently, Restore Belize, through one of its programs, the I Am Belize Scholarship Program, presently has 43 of these special young minds attending various high schools in the Belize district. These young persons are assisted in obtaining a high school education by providing them with full service attention program to their needs, including mentoring and coaching by the Restore Belize staff and assisting with daily needs like transportation and even food costs. This we intend to emulate countrywide, recognizing that this is needed in all communities of our country. We must do everything we can for our youth and assist them to become productive members of our society. Another program of Restore Belize is the Trauma-Informed Practices in School, TIPS. As it stands, it presently only offers capacity development training to teachers in respective schools. The schools, Mad Williams, St. John's Anglican, and Queen Street Baptist have done trainings in 2019 and 2020. The long-term vision of the program is for it to be a catalyst for change in the way duty bearers see their role in engaging with children, youth, and their community. Duty bearers are teachers, parents, community leaders, including the police. The program will have several spin-offs that will be specialized to meet the needs of the communities. The long-term plan for this program is for it to also roll out to the various districts as presently it is Belize City Center. Madam Speaker, back in January of this year, in a report to Parliament, I recounted that recessionary storms buffeted the real economy of Belize well before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. For 4 consecutive quarters prior to the fourth quarter of 2019, the economy shrunk. And even without COVID-19, the striking fact is that our economy shrunk during 3 of the last 5 UDP years. The domestic economy starts in 2021, where it ended in 2012, producing $3.3 billion of value in gross activity. Per capita income, we repeat, is at 1992 levels, shamefully lagging behind almost every regional pair, including Guatemala, El Salvador, Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, and many others. Here is the evidence that the UDP, long before leaving office, simply gave up on business. Belize currently has a rank of 135 out of 190 countries assessed by the World Bank for ease of doing business, again trailing almost every regional pair. When it comes to starting a business, the rank drops to 167 of 190. Put another way, only 23 countries on earth are less efficient at facilitating the startup of a business than Belize is. This cannot be allowed to continue. This is not who we are. Belizeans are far better than this rank. Our natural and human resources manifestly superior to this shoddy station, a station of which the UDP, after 13 years in office, must take ownership. Our administration, this government, pledges in collaboration with the social partners and the citizenry at large to spearhead a dramatic transformation of the business environment. Here is how this will be achieved. First, our public officers, from security personnel to teachers to service providers, have a personal stake in this transformation. Service standards across ministries and departments will determine directly or indirectly budgetary success, and that budgetary success will be shared throughout the economy, but also among government's 15,000 strong team. That is the spirit and the substance of the recent joint union consultations. Ministers, CEOs, and heads of departments will be expected not only to lead the way, but also to set the example. Second, a cluster of legislative enhancements will be rolled out during the first year of our reform plan, specific to areas such as exchange control regulations, securities and capital markets, and company and insolvency laws. Complementing this fresh framework will be an e-governance campaign to enable online access to 90% of government services by the end of our first term. We have also committed to our multilateral partners that as soon as this emergency abates, the government will adopt a fiscal responsibility law with explicit rules moored to public financial management reforms. This framework will address public debt limitations, budget performance targets, correction mechanisms, and an inclusive, transparent Fiscal Oversight Council. The Ministry of Finance is also committed to adopting a multi-year budgeting approach, upgrading the cash and public investment management, and instituting financial risk assessment. Third, to spark this exciting era of prosperity, the new jobs, the infusion of foreign direct investment, the unleashing of export potential, the government must tear down the unnecessary roadblocks to doing business. We have to fast-track the approvals of strategic investments, accelerate real estate-related processes, relax constraints for small and medium-sized businesses to operate, pursue private-public partnerships where these can provide capital and know-how, and urgently build up the national logistics network. Many stubborn structural barriers to growth and diversification must be removed. To remove those barriers, we will have to improve access to credit through the creation of a credit bureau and credit collateral registry, lower barriers to entry into and exit from the market, carry out overdue labor market reforms to allow flexible working hours so that businesses can adjust to fast-changing market conditions, and transform education and technical training to equip workers and entrepreneurs with skills that match tomorrow's economy rather than yesterday's. Finally, the twin maladies of crime and corruption must not be allowed to fester, for they gnaw at the critical core of investor confidence, befouling the overall environment of doing business. Notwithstanding our harsh fiscal restrictions, government has provided, and I pledge will continue to provide, the resources for a more vigorous citizen and visitor security strategy, complemented always by a robust social safety net for the vulnerable population. In addition, I expect that this year, flesh will be put on the bones of the whistleblowers and the civil and criminal unjust enrichment laws, both solemn undertakings agreed upon with the joint unions during the recent budget consultations, and is in keeping with our manifesto commitment to nurturing the national principles and dignity to public life. Madam Speaker, unlike a hurricane, a visible menace allowing those in its path to prepare, then to quickly assess the evident damage and start the rebuilding, this national crisis is different. What we are addressing is 13 years of UDP-induced foundational rot and decline, capped by the COVID pandemic. This compromised structure, as full as it might be of underlying potential for greatness, is now being buffeted by a rolling calamity, hitting us in surges, each surge finding us weaker and more vulnerable. Those before us had no concern for tomorrow. They left the public finances on life support with barely a pulse. The UDP engaged in a splurge with the double windfalls of oil royalties and Petro-Caribe funds, together over $1 billion, which today could have put $6,000 into the pockets of every working man and woman if government would have handed out that money as a stimulus check. But the oil royalties and Petrocaribbean did not quench their thirst. During their 3 terms in office, they borrowed over $3 million cumulatively, $1 billion per term, leaving us with this $4.2 billion monster debt howling for repayment. While in their hands, a generational windfall vanished, and from our hands must now come recovery and renewal. I am confident that our recovery plan can turn things around. We can reverse this decline and restore our tranquil haven. To do so, all stakeholders have to stop watching one another in a never-ending stare-down and start watching where we want to be in 5 years. At that glorious point of recovery, a few years from now, if we do the right things, unemployment will be at low single digits. Wages will be buoyant and growing. The economy will be humming apace at 4 or 5% growth per year. Exports will soar like never before, and our dollar will be strong again. Government's budget will return to a sustained surplus, and the public debt will have been halved or more. Plan Belize, our North Star, our roadmap for re-emergence will bring jobs at livable wages, a renaissance in agro-productive output, the return of investment confidence, land and home ownership opportunities for the disadvantaged, and a return to equitable economic growth. But we will only get to that prosperous place with national unity, with joint purpose, and with ceaseless striving. The father of the nation, the Right Honorable George Rice, often exhorted us to wake up and work. He summoned us to an untiring defense of the national good. Now, more than ever, we must trail his shining example of unconquerable optimism and share his vision of a society aroused and attuned to the national interests, of an empowered Belizean people, prosperous and striding stout-heartedly to better days when we can live our promise that everybody will win. We remain convinced that working together and with the guidance of our Creator, this is well within our reach. Thank you. I name Thursday and Friday, 22nd and 23rd April 2021, respectively, for the continuation of the debate on the General Revenue Appropriation 2021-2022 Bill 2021.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Honorable members, before we proceed, I ask for your indulgence in suspending the meeting for a minute so that the podium may be removed from the chamber.
I move that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any order opposed.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Natural Resources, Petroleum and Mining.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Land Utilization Act, Chapter 188 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to strengthen the membership of the Land Subdivision and Utilization Authority and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Natural Resources and Environment Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Land Utilization Act, Chapter 184 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to strengthen the membership of the Land Subdivision and Utilization Authority and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Supreme Court of Judicature Act, Chapter 91 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to allow for civil proceedings to be continued and determined by another judge if the judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. By way of introduction, the Supreme Court of Judicature Amendment Bill seeks to provide that civil proceedings brought before a single judge may be continued and determined by another judge if the judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies. The bill consists of a long title and two clauses and is summarized as follows. The long title indicates that the purpose of the bill is to make provisions to allow civil proceedings brought before a single judge to be continued and determined by another judge. Clause 1 provides for the short title of the bill, and Clause 2 inserts a new section 21A that will allow civil proceedings brought before a single judge to be continued and determined by another judge if for any reason that judge is unable to continue the proceedings, and if the parties to the proceeding consent to them to be continued and determined by the other judge.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Supreme Court of Judicature Act, Chapter 91 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to allow for the civil proceedings to be continued and determined by another judge if the judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to allow for civil appeals to be continued and determined by another judge or the remaining panel of judges if a judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. And by way of introduction, The bill consists of a long title and 2 clauses and is summarized as follows. The long title indicates that the purpose of the bill is to allow for civil appeals to be continued and determined by another judge or the remaining panel of judges if a judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies. Clause 1 of the bill provides the short title, and Clause 2 of the bill inserts a new section, 13A, which allows for a civil appeal that is brought before a single judge or a panel of judges to be continued and determined by another judge or the remaining judges or on the panel of judges as the case may be. This may only occur if 2 conditions are satisfied. First, if the single judge or one or more judge on this panel of judges with conduct of the matter is for any reason unable to continue to hear or determine the matter, and second, if the party to the appeal consents to the appeal being continued and determined by the other judge or the remaining judges on the panel or by another panel as the case may be.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an Act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to allow for civil appeals to be continued and determined by another judge or the remaining panel of judges if a judge before whom the proceedings took place has demitted office, is removed from office, retires from office, or dies, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to validate the decisions of the Court of Appeal in instances where a judge has died or vacated office, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. And by way of brief introduction, the bill consists of a long title and 2 clauses and is summarized as follows. The long title indicates that the purpose of the bill is to validate the decisions of the Court of Appeal in instances where a judge has died or has vacated office. Clause 1 of the bill provides the short title. Clause 2 of the bill validates every decision delivered by the Court of Appeal between the period of January 2004 and the date of entry into force of the Act, where one or more judge with conduct of a matter has died or vacated office.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an Act to validate the decisions of the Court of Appeal in instances where a judge has died or vacated office and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Public Service, Constitutional and Political Reform.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Belize Constitution, Chapter 4 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide an additional ground for vacating the office of a member of the Belize Advisory Council, the Election and Boundaries Commission, the Public Services Commission, and the Security Services Commission, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, in summary, this bill consists of a long title and 5 clauses and seeks to amend sections 54, 88, 105, and 110C of the Belize Constitution to deal with several anomalies that have arisen regarding the appointment of persons to various constitutionally appointed commissions, namely the Public Service Commission, the Security Services Commission, the Belize Advisory Council, and the Election and Boundaries Commission. The proposed amendments seek to bring to an end the appointment of such members upon a dissolution of the House of Representatives. As it currently stands, there are scenarios of appointments that the framers of the Constitution could not have contemplated, and these require remedying. In addition to the fixing of these anomalies, Madam Speaker, in the case of the Public Services Commission, The proposed amendments will also seek to restructure the Public Services Commission to allow the Leader of the Opposition to recommend one member to the PSC and also the representatives of the public officers to recommend one member. So, Madam Speaker, in addition to fixing the anomalies, this bill seeks to memorialize and promote a good governance initiative that I am sure is welcome. This bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. Thank you.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an Act to amend the Belize Constitution, Chapter 4 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide an additional ground for vacating the office of a member of the Belize Advisory Council, the Election and Boundaries Commission, the Public Services Commission, and the Security Services Commission, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Public Health Act, Chapter 40 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the control and regulation of vaccines and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Health and Human Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an Act to amend the Public Health Act, Chapter 40 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the control and regulation of vaccines and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, not to repeat the recitals, I move Madam Speaker, I move that at its rising today, the House adjourns to Thursday, 22nd and April 21st, April 2020 at 9 a.m.
Honorable members, the question is that the House at its rising today adjourn to Thursday, 22nd April 2021 at 9 a.m. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business, motions.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, not to repeat the recitals, I move, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House approves the amendment to the standing orders proposed in the draft statutory instrument annexed thereto, which is tabled as sessional paper number HR 5A113, and the standing orders of the House shall be and are thereby amended accordingly.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House approves the amendment to the standing orders proposed in the draft statutory instrument annexed hereto, which is tabled as sessional paper number HR 5A/1/13, and the standing orders of the House shall be and hereby amended accordingly. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I'm not sure where it is that we can speak on these motions that are being returned, but I suspect it is no.
Mr. Leader of Opposition, you may recall at the previous House meetings, these were debated.
Isn't this to amend the standing orders to allow for the COVID measures and also, Madam Speaker, for the Public Accounts Committee to be made joint? It was sent to committee and it is being brought back now. Isn't that what we're doing? So we did not get a chance to debate it in this House?
No. Allow me 1 second to confer with Deputy Clerk. Deputy Clerk? Thank you, Deputy Clerk. I'm directed to Standing Order number 89, Mr. Leader of the Opposition. And yes, it should have been debated. It was not after the session with the committee, and therefore I will allow you to comment on this.
My comments, thank you, Madam Speaker, much obliged. That has always, for me in my many years in this House, been a gray area in terms of the motion and exactly where we should do the debate. And indeed, while there was, I think, some cursory discussion on the measures, the COVID measures in this Honorable House, which I think, Madam Speaker, have worked tremendously well, I can say, and I believe I can speak on behalf of my colleagues on this side of the House, that while we are in here, we have seen and observed very well safe practices that have kept us safe from contracting the virus, at least while we're in the chambers here. My comments, Madam Speaker, on this motion is to say firstly that I am terribly disturbed that in fact both of the two amendments are coupled together in the motion. The first part of the motion, or in the motion, is the measure to have us adopt with all that you see here, Madam Speaker, and possibly more, to face off the COVID-19 virus. But the second part of the same motion deals with a completely different topic, and that topic, Madam Speaker, is to bring together the House and the Senate members, the House and Senate members, in order to form a joint public accounts committee. Something which, Madam Speaker, I think we will all agree in terms of the standing orders that these kinds of amendments need to be made. But it is in that vein, Madam Speaker, that I make my point today, that in fact, during the course of the meeting where the motion was referred to the Honorable Subcommittee, the Committee of Constitution and Foreign Affairs, that my friend, the member from Cayo South, heads, that, Madam Speaker, we were not given any kind of listening ear by the chairman, who was very, very arrogant, who was very childish,
Member?
Who was, Madam Speaker, I take your caution, but if we are to truly, Madam Speaker, come together in a vein of trying to develop things for the better, the member from Cayo South, in fact, lamented many, many times over the years that he was the junior member on the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee, or sorry, the Public Accounts Committee, that certain things were not being done. And he did not give due process whatsoever, Madam Speaker, to the concerns and to the positions that we were trying to make at the time that were not political in any way. He basically went in there and said, well, we we are the numbers, we have the numbers now, we have the greater numbers, so whatever you have to say, we don't really care. Let's take it back unamended. That was the kind of behavior, Madam Speaker, that came from the member, the chairman of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee, that this matter was referred to. And that bothers me, Madam Speaker, because if we're truly going to try to work to be transparent, remember their big spiel that they had, and they brought a motion here to talk about good governance, and the Public Accounts Committee, Madam Speaker, is one such element of that good governance that they spoke about. Well then, let us work truly together to try to fix things. I was terribly dismayed by that. But again, Madam Speaker, I place on record that for the second portion of the motion, having to do with the kinds of changes that you have spearheaded, Madam Speaker, to ensure that we are safe in this House, we have absolutely no difficulty. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Kyoto.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. I had no intentions of speaking today, but I think what leader of the opposition mentioned deserves a response. Madam Speaker, I do not understand why the members on the other side, led by the leader of the opposition, would have any concern with the motion that we are putting forward when it pertains to accountability and good governance. The Public Accounts Committee restructuring is in the favor of the opposition. It gives them an opportunity to join with the social partners to analyze the national budget and to analyze the Auditor General's report, something that we could never have done when they were in government. The second part of the Public Accounts Committee motion was to make it all Public Accounts Committee meetings to be heard in public. And that goes directly to transparency in government. Again, I do not see how they can have any objections to that. It just means that the meetings will be held where people will have an opportunity to look, to hear the meetings, and to make sure that the members that are on those committees act in a professional manner, and that the witnesses that come forward present themselves in a professional manner, and the topics are debated so that people can look at it, listen to it, and come up with their own points of view. That, Madam Speaker, as you are aware, is one of the bases of accountability, transparency, and good governance. So it could be that the leader of the opposition is not accustomed to being on the other side. It could be that he is not accustomed to not getting his way in every way that he wants. But he has to be used to it now, Madam Speaker, because he is now in the opposition. And so he just, I believe, has to be a little bit more mature, listen, learn, and be patient. So that's the true essence of what has happened, Madam Speaker. We followed the rules, we listened to their proposals, but there was nothing logical in what he was saying. And therefore, it is my responsibility to not table illogical proposals. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honourable House approves the amendment to the standing orders proposed in the draft statutory instrument annexed hereto, which is tabled as sessional paper number HR 5A/1/13, and the standing orders of the House shall be and are hereby amended accordingly. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, with your permission not to repeat the recitals, I move, now therefore be it resolved, that this Honorable House thereby nominate the Honorable Luis Alexander Balona, the Honorable Jorge Espat, and the Honorable Tracy Panton to be members of the National Assembly Staff Committee.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House hereby nominates the Honorable Luis Alexander Balona, the Honorable Jorge Espat, and the Honorable Tracy Panton to be members of the National Assembly Staff Committee. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Madam Speaker, I move whereas Section 3-1 of the Loans, Belize Development, the Caribbean Development Bank Act, Chapter 74, the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, provides that subject to such conditions as may be agreed between the government and the Caribbean Development Bank, the government may borrow from the bank from time to time such sums as may be required by the government. And whereas Section 3, subsection 2 of the said Act further provides that no agreement in respect of sums borrowed under the powers conferred of Section 3, subsection 1, shall be executed unless the terms and conditions thereof have been first approved by a resolution of the House of Representatives to that effect. And whereas the Board of Directors of the bank has recently approved a loan for the government of Belize in the sum of US $34,300,000, and whereas the Board of Directors of the bank has recently approved a grant to the government of Belize of an amount not exceeding the equivalent of US $18,675,450 from CDB, acting as administrator of the UK Caribbean Infrastructure Partnership Fund, CIF grant, to assist in financing the project. And whereas the purpose of the loan is to provide assistance in financing major road rehabilitation and upgrade work to approximately 125 kilometers of roadway of the Philip Gorson Highway and Ramate Bypass. And whereas the road upgrading project consists of the following components: 1, project preparation assistance, including a consultancy for the preparation of a feasibility study and detailed designs undertaking with grant funding from the UK CIF. 2, land acquisition ongoing of approximately 6.9 hectares of land by government for road realignment and widening. 3, major and minor works for road rehabilitation and upgrade work to approximately 125 kilometers of roadway to be undertaken in 4 lots. 4, engineering and construction related services for the construction supervision of major works and for the design and construction supervision of minor works associated with the creation of safe school zones. 5, other project support services targeting the communities along the project corridor. 6, project management, including the current project execution unit, the PEU, additional personnel, consultants, and to supplement the PEU, 2 subject management vehicles and furniture equipment for the PEU. And whereas the expected outcome of the project are increased safety, accessibility, efficiency, and resiliency of the PGH miles 24.5 to 92 and the Ramate Bypass, and improving capacity for informed decisions making for livelihood enhancement along PGH and the Ramate Bypass. And whereas the entire project is estimated to cost some US $59.8 million, including some US $8.8 million in counterpart financing. And whereas the bank has offered to lend to the government the sum of US $34 million loan to finance the project on the following terms and conditions. Ordinary capital resource portion. A, US 21,300,000 ordinary capital resources OCR to be repaid in 48 approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments commencing 5 years after the date of the loan agreement. B, interest at the rate of 3.75% variable per annum to be paid quarterly on the outstanding OCR portion of the loan. C, a commitment fee of 1% to be paid quarterly on the withdrawn portion of the loan from time to time, to accrue from the 60th day after the date of the loan agreement. Social funds resources portion. A, US 13 million US special funds resources, the CFR, to be repaid in 80 equal or approximately equal and consecutively quarter installments commencing 5 years after the date of the loan. B, interest at the rate of 1% per annum to be paid quarterly on the outstanding CFR portion of the loan. The loan shall be fully disbursed by December 31st, 2024, or such later date as the bank may specify in writing. Now therefore, be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that the loan proceeds would significantly assist the government of Belize in its endeavor to increase safety, accessibility, efficiency, and resiliency of the PGH miles 24.5 to 92 and the Ramate bypass, and improve capacity for informed decision-making for livelihood enhancement along PGH and the Ramate bypass, approves and confirms that the government may enter into a loan agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said agreement and all other documents associated therewith. The motion has the recommendation of the Cabinet.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development, and Investment.
Madam Speaker, with your indulgence, I wish to read the last recital, being that the motion has been circulated to the Honorable House. Now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that the loan proceeds would significantly assist the government of Belize in its continued efforts to interrupt the transmission chain of COVID-19 in the country and fight the pandemic, approve and confirm that the government may enter into a loan contract and sovereign counter guarantee agreement with the Inter-American Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said contracts and all other documents associated therewith.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development, and Investment.
Madam Speaker, I move the Official Charities Fund Motion 2021. Be it resolved that this Honorable House approves the expenditure of $2,385,089 from the Official Charities Fund as detailed in Appendix A of the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending 31st March 2022. This motion has the recommendation of the Cabinet.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Committee of Supply for examination, consideration, and report. Clerk. Adjournment. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
I move that the House be now adjourned.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do now adjourn.
Madam Speaker,
I recognize member.
Madam Speaker, I seek leave to speak on a matter of public concern.
Sure. Please, members, may I take the opportunity to remind all members, having done this a couple of times now under my belt, it is one matter of national importance. Thank you.
Noted, Madam Speaker. I would like to speak on the matter of skyrocketing costs of living. I seek your indulgence to refer to my notes. I would also, before I get started, like to acknowledge the wonderful people of Mesopotamia who have given me the distinct privilege to be here today and every time to represent them. And it is in that vein that I must discuss the skyrocketing cost of living. Madam Speaker, the cost of living is unbearable for the working class and devastating for those that are on the margin, desperately trying to survive the COVID-19 economic crisis. Things have gotten so bad, Madam Speaker, a mother from my constituency was forced to send her daughter to the US-Mexican border to enter America in hopes of escaping the extreme poverty that has become the reality for most under this current administration. Madam Speaker, everything is going up, the likes of which we have never seen. Everything going up except minimum wage and pay for the public officers, healthcare workers, police, BDF, Coast Guards, and teachers. Gas prices have skyrocketed, Madam Speaker, to the almost $12 mark. Something the now Prime Minister vehemently condemned when he was the then leader of the opposition. At that time, he decried the increase in fuel prices and said it was callous and unnecessary, Madam Speaker. But we have had no less than 14 fuel increases since this PUP administration has come to power in November, and that directly impacts the cost of living. For the worst that we have seen in my generation, Madam Speaker. Chicken has gone up by $8, pork has gone up, rice and beans has gone up, everything has gone up except the minimum wage and pay for our teachers and public officers, Madam Speaker. It is bad enough that the COVID-19 unemployment fund and food assistance programs that were hallmarks of the UDP administration has stopped under this PUP administration, Madam Speaker. But now people have to find more money that they don't have to begin with to buy basic necessities that they could not afford and still cannot afford. The people who are already doing bad due to COVID-19, Madam Speaker. So many jobs lost, tens of thousands of jobs lost, hundreds of my constituents unemployed, they come to my office every day, can't get relief from human services, unable to find new jobs because of the curfew restrictions and business closures, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, things continue to get worse. With a Prime Minister who has no plan to grow the economy and make up the COVID-19 deficit. A Prime Minister who sees taxing fuel as his only way to erase the deficit, even though when he was the leader of the opposition, he knew taxing fuel was not the answer. This Prime Minister knows that raising fuel prices will only hurt the productive sector, Madam Speaker, and depress the economy. And we are seeing that in the rising cost of living.
Member,
Speaker.
we have a point. Yes, Prime Minister.
The honorable member's uncle would be very disappointed to see that his nephew is reading from his notes. You know what I mean? He's reading his speech. He's not referring to his speech.
But he did ask,
reading.
yes, PM, but he did ask my indulgence.
To read?
To read from his speech.
He's reading a speech.
I will monitor how often he's referring. And member, please, this
Uncle
is a
must be
fairly...
disappointed by you, boy. They let him alone.
Members, this is a fairly small room for 31 persons. I do need some time to make sure I catch the eye of who stands. I don't necessarily need assistance to know when one of you is standing. Member, continue. You asked to refer to your speech. Ensure that it's a referral and not a straight verbatim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Prime Minister, who just read from the teleprompter. Thank you for your recognition that I am referring to my notes.
Father used to read also a speech to of the budget. So let me school you. The budget, you have to read it because it has many pages.
Thank
so
you for your infinite wisdom, Prime
Minister.
I will have to, I expected this discourse to occur 2 weeks from now, not on the presentation of the budget. And for clarity, all budget speeches are read. And for clarity, the request was made, just as you did just now, member, but in this case, it was made to read simply from the practicality of one, under the COVID measures that we're in and the mask being on for so long, and two, in 2021, reading from a paper or reading digitally is really not a big difference.
I agree with you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, this Prime Minister, as I said, knows that raising taxes on fuel prices will hurt this economy. Yet this government continues with this downward spiral, and we will only see greater suffering of the poor. Madam Speaker, we need to sound the alarm, because the sky is falling and Belize is burning under this current administration, Madam Speaker. 4 months ago, I rose in this honorable house to speak on the adjournment, and I anticipated the social crisis that this nation is now engulfed in, Madam Speaker. A crisis that has been aggravated by the negligence and misprioritization
again, on a point of order, Madam Speaker.
Administration, Madam
Member,
Speaker.
you must sit so I can address the point of order. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, on the adjournment, a member can only speak on one matter. And he's pretty much going through as if he's reading his budget presentation. He's all over the place. He needs to speak on one thing. If he wants to speak for the high cost of fuel, let him speak on that. But he need to go from that and on to all over the place. So I just need to make that point of order, Madam Speaker. He needs to speak on one matter, one issue.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Member for Mesopotamia, your matter of national importance was on the increasing cost of...
The skyrocketing cost of living, Madam Speaker.
The increasing cost of living. I will ask that you contain your comments to that. I will ask not to get into repetition. And of course, we all are aware that we are not to even attempt to debate budget today.
I'm guided, Madam Speaker. I have not read the budget.
Madam Speaker,
and I fell asleep listening to the Prime
allow me,
Minister.
Madam
So
Speaker.
I'm certainly not debating the budget, Madam Speaker. I would never. These are all issues that I have been bombarded with in my constituency, Madam Speaker, and it would be irresponsible
we must contain
and
it to the
negligent of me not to address the skyrocketing cost of living. That is where my remarks would be restricted to, Madam Speaker.
And I reserve the right, member, that if I hear from your commentary that you are being repetitive, I will have to ask you to take your seat, as it is not allowed for. We have a point of order.
Yes, I do.
May I get the point of order?
Yes, Madam Speaker, it goes to the very same point of where you are allowed to speak on one issue. When we are on the other side and we attempted to speak on the cost of living, the former Prime Minister would get up and tell us we can't do that because we only have to speak on one matter. And the speakers before you would rule in favor of the then Prime Minister, saying that we could only speak on one matter. And the honorable member from the other side is speaking about everything. Cost of living could be any and everything. We could be here till tomorrow talking about the cost of living. He needs to address one issue. And Madam Speaker, he is not doing that.
Member for Mesopotamia, can we proceed with your singular matter?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Again, Madam Speaker, the matter is that people are suffering in this country. And I have a responsibility the same way that the PUP have a mandate. I have a mandate in Mesopotamia, Madam Speaker. My constituents came out and voted unanimously for the UDP in the last municipal elections. So I have all authority to come here and present their concerns to this honorable House,
yes,
Madam
member,
Speaker.
but on Standing Order 13, you must only present on one matter of
Yes,
national
Madam Speaker,
importance.
and that's the skyrocketing cost of living, and I'm guided by Madam Speaker's suggestions to restrict my comments to the skyrocketing cost of living, Madam Speaker. Again, as I said, I came here 4 months ago and I anticipated that the skyrocketing cost of living would engulf this nation, and the people are suffering and they're crying out, Madam Speaker. And all this administration has done is to blame the UDP for what we all know is a result of the COVID-19 financial crash. It is not the UDP that is at the helm of this government right now, Madam Speaker. It is the PUP that got the job that they begged the people of this nation to give them. That they show up to work with a strategy of blaming the previous administration for all of the problems of today, which will not relieve this administration of the job it promised the Belizean it was capable of doing, Madam Speaker. And trying to silence me is not the approach. I would hope that the Prime Minister would listen to the complaints of the people in Mesopotamia, Madam Speaker, because they are Belizeans too. There was someone that I went to an event yesterday and they said, we need to go back to the times of George Price. They have a George Price holiday, and George Price used to say, we're all Belizeans. And so the people in Mesopotamia have very valid concerns, and I would hope that the Prime Minister would listen to them rather than try to silence me, Madam Speaker, because even the member from Lake Independence has said he has never seen things so bad, Madam Speaker. He has never seen so many grown men and women cry in search of relief from the hardships brought about by this COVID-19 economic crisis, Madam Speaker, which has seen the cost of living skyrocketing, with the current administration taking no steps to ease the plight of the Belizean people or to mitigate the suffering of the Belizean people, Madam Speaker. Rather than implement all of the perfect solutions this government had when they were in opposition, Madam Speaker, all we've seen is wastage. While infrastructure is essential to the development of our nation, Madam Speaker, we cannot and must not ever prioritize roads and highways over food and basic welfare of our people, Madam Speaker.
Member, I caution on the reading. This is the standing order 13. One really ought to speak on his feet. You may refer. But
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm just making the point to highlight the prioritization of this government and where the focus needs to be, Madam Speaker. It is the request of my constituents to make a plea to the government. I'm pleading with them to refocus from giving out hundreds of contracts for road works and to refocus on giving out food assistance, giving out financial aid, Madam Speaker. So I'm just giving context, Madam Speaker. As we enter a phase of austerity, Madam Speaker, those measures would be best applied at the Ministry of Health, where you have a contract being awarded to the minister's transition aid for $370,000, Madam Speaker.
Member for Mesopotamia, may I caution that you're running that very fine balance, in my humble view as the Speaker of this House, where you are transitioning from the cost of living, which is an all-encompassing matter and makes it difficult, very difficult, to stay within the confines of a singular matter.
Guided, Madam Speaker. Guided, Madam Speaker. Everybody feel win is now a forgotten promise in the graveyard of political manifestos, Madam Speaker. Even Philip Golson could see clearly that everybody is losing, Madam Speaker. Everybody except the ministers and their chosen few. I plead with the Prime Minister to cut the cost of living, Madam Speaker, by reducing the taxes on fuel, as he said could be done when he was the leader of the opposition.
Member for Mesopotamia. All members, when I speak, you really ought to sit. That is the courtesy that you give the chair. Thank you. You are reading from your notes. I'm watching you and you're reading from your notes. I have been in the chair where you were in the upper chamber, and I have also been cautioned myself on that. And so I have some experience in understanding what the chair goes through. I plead with you to not read from your notes. Refer is an entirely different matter.
The distinction is noted, Madam Speaker. It is quite difficult for you to decipher whether I am reading or referring, but I'm guided to give a greater.
You're not reading right now, member.
Well, I have to remind myself of where I'm going, so I don't stray into that gray area of not focusing on one topic, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, I would ask the Prime Minister to focus on alleviating the pain and the suffering of the Belizean people, Madam Speaker. One of the ways that this could be done is the Waterloo project, the port facility, which would bring about 2,500 jobs, Madam Speaker, and triple revenue, be a great source of revenue collection, Madam Speaker. So it is these things that I believe the Prime Minister should focus on, should have hit the ground running when he got elected, he and his cabinet, so that we can bring about the alleviation, since we're not giving any food, we're not giving any COVID-19 relief, Madam Speaker. We need to employ these people because they're unemployed, so they have no money to buy these exorbitant foods and services, and there is no direction that sees us going towards employment and reopening the economy. So I would urge the Prime Minister to focus on providing a way forth for people to be able to do for themselves, because right now they cannot do for themselves and the cost of living is unbearable and devastating, Madam Speaker. You know, I will close with this. There were those who said that we were headed in the wrong direction under the UDP. But I could only describe the direction now as if we have reversed off of the road into the proverbial sea of despair, Madam Speaker. And if we do not stop reversing into that sea, there will be many more little Belizean girls and boys headed to the US border to escape the extreme poverty that has become the reality under this PUP administration. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, another attempt to try to answer all that the honorable member from Mesopotamia has been saying. But I don't know what country you live in. It seems that you did not even listen to what I just presented to you, the facts of
Madam
your
Speaker,
father. Could you
on
listen?
a point of order,
What's the point?
the Prime Minister is allowed to respond to what I said, but I was not debating his budget presentation, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Prime Minister, may you have a seat? Member for Mesopotamia. The Prime Minister is hardly on his feet to respond, which is allowed. A minister may respond on a matter of national importance, and that is only a minister that may do that. He is hardly a few minutes on his feet for me to determine if he has engaged. Please do not anticipate. Let us hear, and if indeed the Prime Minister gets into a debate of the budget, I'll be the first to caution him on that. Okay?
I think you got a copy of my budget presentation. You can read it and you can see why is it we are where we are today. That what we have present, the crisis that we are facing right now, it is because of your father, as the Prime Minister back then, took Belize in the wrong direction. What's your point of order?
What's the point
What's
of
your
order?
point of order?
Madam Speaker, since I have been coming to this House, you have allowed the Prime Minister to refer to my father, my father, my father, my father. I am an elected member of this House, Madam Speaker. I am not my father's son. And I know that Madam Speaker, would not want us, you would not want us to go down the road of referring to family members
Member for Mesopotamia.
and discussing about family
Member
members,
for
Madam Speaker.
Mesopotamia. There is a standing members. I intend to get through these House meetings with a measure of parliamentary parlance that is acceptable. I use the term loosely because, as I have said before in previous meetings, where the now opposition, when was in government, did refer to persons' parents, and the government that was then opposition also did same. I would like to refer all members to the announcement that I made at the start of today's proceedings. And I welcome this vigorous discussion in those working committees so that we improve not only code of conduct, but standing orders, because clearly there is a lot of room for growth and improvement there. Member for Mesopotamia, while I will entertain standing up on point of orders, I will not entertain it ad nauseum. Continue. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I guess that the honorable member from Mesopotamia wants to divert the attention from the budget and trying to create some kind of, I don't know, spectacle, or trying to get attention. So I will end with this. Read the budget, take your time, make somebody explain to you what's in there so that you can then properly understand where is it where we are today. This government is attempting to fix the 13 years of mismanagement, incompetence, and corruption that was headed by no other than your father, the then Prime Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I recognize the Leader of Opposition.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Firstly, let me join with you and with the Prime Minister, and I beg your indulgence, Madam Speaker, before I get into what I'd like to speak on, to sympathize with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and also to join in the chorus that has offered condolences to Her Majesty the Queen on the passing of her husband. And let me also join myself, Madam Speaker, and those on this side of this Honorable House to the congratulatory remarks to our colleague, the new member for Corozal Bay. Madam Speaker, I think you hinted in your remarks this morning that this now brings a record number of females in this Honorable House throughout the course of history. And that has got to be a happy day for women in this country. And it certainly is a happy day for all Belizeans when women advance in that manner. So despite the political divide, Madam Speaker, I congratulate my colleague and I wish her well as she attempts to represent the people of Corozal Bay. If I may as well, Madam Speaker, plead to you to get some clarity. Just now, two motions apparently slipped by. One having to do with the $34.3 million for the CDB loan for the upgrade of the Philip Golson Highway all the way from, if I'm correct, from the Airport Road to the border, including the Remate Road. And I've not gotten into what I'm saying, I'm just making a point, Madam Speaker, and I've asked for your indulgence, Madam Speaker, just to make the point that it is not clearly defined where it is that the debate should happen with these motions. But having said that, Madam Speaker, I'd hope that we can clear that up so that we are able to know. But if we take it for granted that the motion is passed and it is gone, the one having to do with the CDB, US $34.3 million, Madam Speaker, I'm very concerned, and this is my point of public concern this afternoon, about the investments that have been made already on that portion of road, which have been significant over the last few weeks, if not months, since this PUP administration took office. My friend, the Minister of the Infrastructure, of Works and Infrastructure and Housing, was on Jules Vasquez Uncut, and it became very clear, Madam Speaker, that our good friend, Mr. No Nonsense, Mr. Transparency, Mr. Don't Bring the Mismanagement, had participated, Madam Speaker, in issuing contracts, he and his government, hundreds of contracts. He admitted to this, Madam Speaker, so it is not fictitious. Giving out these contracts.
Member, what is the matter of national importance? Only so that I can be guided.
The matter, Madam Speaker, is that I am concerned that millions have been spent on this very piece of road, which today we passed a motion for monies to be borrowed to fix. So my concern, Madam Speaker, is to understand what is going to happen to those monies that have been spent on fixing the road. Maybe my friend, the Minister of Infrastructure, can enlighten us and tell us. I expect that he will respond to us this afternoon, Madam Speaker, to tell us about the millions that he spent almost in a rush. It would seem to me that they were trying to secure some kind of campaign financing for the municipal elections. Because, Madam Speaker, as he conceded on Jules Vasquez Uncut, these contracts were given out.
I caution about motives that are not becoming.
Okay, Madam Speaker, well, I will not attribute them to him per se. I apologize. But it is factual that the administration has given out contracts for these and other works without them going through the proper procedure. This action, Madam Speaker, was confirmed by the member himself. Madam Speaker, as we saw in the loan motion, that is passed. I'm not debating that.
I was just going to caution.
That is
please,
passed.
We cannot debate.
Much
what has
obliged,
already
Madam
been
Speaker, it
passed.
is passed. We won't go back to that. But the concern there and the point made to the CDB when that was being requested, that loan was being requested, was that it needed to be a climate resilient road, Madam Speaker. I don't know whether when the administration enters into these, what I would believe to be illegal contracts, Madam Speaker, to provide a quick fix. And I speak on behalf of all the residents of the area and all those who have to traverse that portion of the road coming from Orangewark or Corozal, moving into Belize City. It is a wonderful fix from where it was. It is a wonderful fix from where it was. But, Madam Speaker, if it is, you know that you were going to borrow $70, $80 million, and they were the ones, Madam Speaker, who spoke a great deal about that same loan project. Also, the Caracol Road, you remember, Prime Minister, when you were on this side?
No.
Madam Speaker, we have debated these both motions. Now you want to bring up a Caracol.
We have not debated the motion. We have not debated the motion. That is the problem that I'm having, but I am not talking about that.
Leader of Opposition, Member for Colette, in all the years of Parliament, both House and Senate, when the mover of the motion says, I move or I so move, that is when the debate occurs. I purposely looked up on both sides, even on the upper, and no one stood. And therefore, that motion or motions were passed. Let me complete my thought. Unless we are serious about improving standing orders and bringing them up to date, there will always be a measure of ambiguity that is left to the chair to try and determine the best way forward. I am guided by the rules that have been printed, unfortunately, since 1962, and I think we can all agree in this House it is high time that we address those rules, because there are clearly circumstances, nuances, if I may say, that it does not allow for, except the subjectivity of the chair in the ruling. It is not the best, but it is what you have put before me as the chair. And I will caution, again, it is the chair's domain to determine if we are going off into a debate of a matter that was already passed. So I ask for caution, member.
Much obliged, Madam Speaker. But the point that I made earlier, I think you have to agree with me, Madam Speaker. Even yourself, with all due respect, Madam Speaker, when this morning we debated the motion having to do with the standing orders, I had to appeal for an opportunity to do so because it was not clearly marked. And you yourself, Madam Speaker, again, with all due respect, did not catch that.
Yes, that was an oversight by the Assembly. The apology is noted here on the record.
And so, Madam Speaker, that is really what created the confusion. But I want to be clear, and I am guided by your decision-making, Madam Speaker, to determine whether I am going back to that or not, because as I've promised you, that is not my intention. My intention is to highlight, Madam Speaker, that now with the passage of that loan motion, that in fact we are in a predicament because millions of dollars have already been spent in a very peculiar manner, a very rushed manner, and I know what the argument of my friend the minister will be. It was very needed, and again I speak on behalf of all of those residents of the area and those who have to traverse that portion of the highway, that it is a wonderful fix. But if it is not along the guidelines of the CDB, Madam Speaker, then what is it that you're going to do? Are you going to go back and break up that portion of the road, all the hot mix that you put down there, which is millions of dollars, is that what you're going to do in order to then make it comply with what the CDB says must be there? Because I note, Madam Speaker, that no drainage was put in along that portion of the road. That must be a significant requirement of the CDB for climate resiliency. So what is it that went on there, Madam Speaker? And the wastage of millions of dollars, was it, Madam Speaker, that the government sought out the Caribbean Development Bank to say, as we did in the Ministry of Education when we procured tablets for the students, that we wanted, in fact, to go ahead and make the purchase because it was an emergency situation, and that we would get some kind of guarantee from the IDB and the CDB that the monies would be refunded? Is that the case? Because if that is the case, then, Madam Speaker, that's what I want to know. Because in this time, when there is this serious financial crunch, you have to be cutting the salaries of public servants, then this is something that you could have saved millions of dollars on. But I suspect, Madam Speaker, that it is because some people are living off the fat. And I'd really want to hear, how is it that these millions of dollars, Madam Speaker, will be accounted for in light of the fact that we've now passed the CDB loan motion for $34.3 million US dollars. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. I recognize Member for Kyle South.
I'm scared at times, Madam Speaker, that I am.
Member, I will have to ask that you wear the mask. It is
Yes,
still
ma'am.
the protocol.
I thought the glass was enough.
Definitely not.
I'm scared, Madam Speaker, that I am giving nightmares to the leader of the opposition. He has sleepless nights thinking of what we do at the Ministry of National Infrastructure and Housing.
Member.
That's a scary thought. Madam Speaker, to enlighten the member from Collet, hopefully, I'll take him back. The People's United Party formed government on the 11th of November 2020. Immediately before, immediately after, there were two storms. I don't know if he recalls that. Eta and Iota, I believe they were called. The government of Belize, through the blessing and authorization of Cabinet, allowed the Ministry of Infrastructure to be able to have a budget of $12 million based on emergency spending. Under the Finance and Audit Reform Act, emergency spending can be done using the limited tender procedure. For the information of the Minister of the Leader of the Opposition, there are three forms of tendering. One is called the limited tender procedure. The second is called the Madam Speaker, you have the public tendering procedure, Madam Speaker, and you have the selective tendering procedure. There are three forms. Under the Finance and Audit Reform Act, when you are spending money under an emergency, it is allowed to use the limited tender procedure. So we followed the rules and regulations. Therefore, the words that he utilized, which is illegal, is wrong. You are not informed. You do not read. You do not understand. You do not even know what engineering principles are about. And definitely you are not an attorney. So I am trying to educate you, sir. Madam Speaker, utilizing the limited tender procedure The ministry has to be able to have certain rates that are established. The engineers at the ministry have to vet the rates and the contractors. Those proposals and estimates are sent to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance has to vet it and send back an authorization. With that authorization, Madam Speaker, we take it to the Contractor General. The Contractor General has to approve it. The Contractor General therefore sends it back to the ministry. The CEO of the ministry then, and only then, can enter into contracts with anybody for the work to be done. Madam Speaker, the $12 million precisely right now, the CEO and his technical staff are completing a report that we will table in the House that will show you exactly where $12 million were spent on infrastructure projects for emergency use. The reason why the opposition member is annoyed and has nightmares, Madam Speaker, is because in the history of his government, they have not seen how $12 million can be spent so equitably. Madam Speaker, we did work in every single district of this country. And it is ludicrous to come here and say it was for municipal election where 80% of the work was done in rural communities. This is the first time that his vehicle, when he drives to his home in Bank, does not drop into craters that are like the moon. He should be happy, Madam Speaker, that the residents of Belize Rural Central can be proud that they have a decent resurfaced highway that leads, Madam Speaker, from the junction of the airport, and we are trying to reach as far as the junction of Boom. It has never been done during his tenure, Madam Speaker, even though he was the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. How ridiculous you are, sir, to even bring it up.
Member, please let's caution. I have noticed. Please proceed. Proceed, Member Pakayaso.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I apologize to raising the tone of my voice.
Not the tone, Member. The tone is welcome.
I'm only apologizing for the tone, Madam.
No, you're going to have to do a bit better than that.
So, what was the emergency and what was needed? The People's United Party's mandate was that we would lend support to the agro-productive sector, something that the past administration for 13 years never did. They totally ignored the productive sector. What am I referring to the productive sector, Madam Speaker? We invested in infrastructure for the sugar roads, Madam Speaker.
1 second, Member wants to point
Madam
out.
Speaker,
Madam Speaker, I am not yielding to him.
It's a point of order. You
No,
must yield.
not yielding.
You must yield.
I don't must. You sit down, boy.
Point of order.
Hey, members.
Madam Speaker,
Members, no.
Madam Speaker, I will ask you to have him apologize
Members,
to me. That
this
remark is
will occur
completely
today.
unparliamentary.
Please, members, please sit. I can appreciate the emotion, the tone of it. The choice of words is a different matter. I can appreciate that we may disagree on ruling of choice of words, but what we cannot disagree on is that I have the last word on that. I am the chair. I am the chair, and I will ask for the respect of me in this chair from both sides. When I ask that something be recanted, when I ask that it be struck off the record, when I ask that one be cautioned with the choice of words, I don't do it glibly. And so I ask for the respect. Those last choice of words used, I will ask not to be entered into the record. And I will ask Member Fakayo South if we can, as you are standing to respond to the member from Colette, to restrict the comments to that so that we can proceed to the adjournment.
Madam Speaker, may I ask
the floor again?
May I ask, Madam Speaker, that it goes beyond that? Every time he does this,
Madam Speaker,
you restrict him,
Members,
but he
members,
never apologizes
Madam
and he
Speaker.
continues to do it.
Members, I will rule that the House be now adjourned. And I will ask that everybody sit and we adjourn. I have ruled. That matter is dealt with.
May
That
I
matter
proceed with
is
my point of
member
order?
from
Madam Speaker,
Mesopotamia.
I have a point of order. I did not get an opportunity to state what my point of order was.
The member did not yield.
But you don't have to yield on a point of order. It's not a point to elucidate, Madam Speaker. It is a point of order. He does not have a choice.
Member for Mesopotamia. No, you don't. Please sit. No, I am referring to member from Colette and you telling me how to respond. This is not the way I wanted this Friday. None of these Fridays, quite frankly, are the way I want them to go. Member for Colette. There's only one person at a time can speak. Did we not all learn this? Thank you. Member for Colette. I am asking you for your point of order.
Speaker cannot reply on anything he wants to talk about.
Yes, this
he
is
must
what I have
reply
said.
on the matter on which I raised. The matter, let me remind him since he seems to not remember, is what will become of all the millions that have been spent there versus what is now approved by the Caribbean Development Bank. How does what has been done on the ground work with what has been approved by the CDB? I don't want to hear where he going, Madam Speaker.
Thank
He
you,
wants to
member.
grandstand.
Thank you. Member for Kaya South, you understand what the comment was?
Madam
that
Speaker,
allowed
no,
you
no,
to
no,
raise?
no, not Madam Speaker. The gentleman from the other side, the member from Colette, made an accusation that we were spending money illegally. And that money that he is referring to comes under one emergency fund that was budgeted for, and I'm explaining what that fund was used for. May I continue, Madam Speaker?
Yes, you may.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, the mandate of the People's United Party was to give support to the agro-productive sector. It just so happened that the emergency was upon us and we accelerated the mandate. We accelerated the mandate with an emergency fund of $12 million. The opposition member also stated that we were using that money to win a municipal election, another nightmare that they have. What was it, Prime Minister? It was 65 out of 67 that we garnered. Am I wrong or am I right with those numbers? Anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker, 65 out of 67, yeah. Knock with chest, Madam Speaker. We don't got no other way around it, and it annoys them. It drives them mad. And so, to answer his accusation, 80% of the work, maybe 90%, I'm not sure as of the exact percentage, and I will send it to you, was not used for municipal work. The large majority of the investment, even the road that he is referring to, is not in a municipality. Madam Speaker, will this gentleman allow me to speak?
Misquoting me, Madam Speaker. I didn't say that the monies were to be spent in municipal elections. I said that
Member
the
for
proceeds...
Member for Colette, are you standing on 37A or are you standing on 37B? 37. Let me refresh your memory. 37A, a member shall not interrupt another member except by rising to a point of order, whereupon the member speaking shall resume his seat and the member interrupting shall simply direct attention to that point which he desires to bring to notice and submit it to the speaker for decision. Or are you rising on 37B to elucidate the matter raised by that member in the course of his speech, provided that that member is speaking is willing to give way and resume his seat, and that member wishing to interrupt is called by the chair? Or is it C, by rising to claim closure under Standing Order 41? It could not be C, so it's either A or B.
To elucidate that he's misquoting me, that he's saying things that I did not say, and he's making an entire argument. I never made any point about the proceeds being used in municipal entities. I didn't say that. What I said, Madam Speaker, was that they did crooked deals in order to get fat so that they could use in the municipal elections as election money. That's what I said.
Thank you for elucidation. No member for Mesopotamia, let me reiterate. When you're going to stand on 37B, I'm speaking. It appears that I'm the only one taking these SOs seriously. I must learn to develop that manner of members. 37B is to elucidate some matter raised by that member in the course of his speech, provided that the member speaking is willing to give way. It's a very clear statement in the English language when it is used, and we must understand what it means. I thank you for elucidation. Member for Kaya South, I ask if you may proceed.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me continue.
Member for Mesopotamia, are you on a point related
Point
to
of
this?
order, Madam Speaker.
On what point,
You told
sir?
me that you were addressing the member from Collett and for me to wait because only one person could talk
What
at the
is
time.
your point of
My
order?
point of order is Standing Order 44. 3B. Where such member has used objectionable, abusive, and insulting or offensive words or language that is unparliamentary, he should be asked to withdraw from the House. This is a repeat offender, the member from Kayo South. He's very disrespectful to members on this side. And you, Madam Speaker, you have been an enforcer. Yes, you have struck his abusive language from the record. But just now he referred to the leader of the opposition as a boy. For him to sit down, boy, Madam Speaker, that has racial undertones, Madam Speaker.
Member for
And he should
Mesopotamia.
apologize. You should compel him to apologize, Madam Speaker. It is not
Mesopotamia.
enough that you strike it from the
Member for
record.
Mesopotamia. Members, it's rather disrespectful that a woman who happens to hold the chair has to raise her voice to get attention of men. It is rather disrespectful.
This is not about gender.
No, I am saying to you, I am the chair. So when I speak, I really ought not to be repeating myself. That is all. And it applies to both sides. I have asked that the words be struck. Member, my ruling is final. Again, when we all commit to improving these standing orders, then we will have a better discourse. Until then, fortunately or unfortunately, my ruling is final. Member for Kaya South.
This is ending up being a wonderful day.
Let's try and make it a short day, shall we?
No, I am bewildered by a certain personality calling me a repeat offender. I mean, Madam Speaker, I'm not doing it, I'm just saying.
Madam Speaker,
I did not.
Madam Speaker,
Members.
this is what happens when he is not asked to apologize. He thinks it's funny.
Members, I will ask. Members, Leader of the Opposition, I'm here, and one beautiful thing about being in this position in this room, I get to hear what you say under your breath, and they're not very nice, and I get what to hear some of the members over here say under their breath, and it's not very nice. So I will ask that we start from now to wrap up this discussion and move forward.
Thank you very much,
And
Madam
I
Speaker.
caution member for Kaya South, I am publicly cautioning that we watch not the tone, because I enjoy the measure of passion myself, but the subject used, the choice of words used. Parliamentary parlance has a meaning.
Am I allowed to repeat what they say to us, Madam Speaker?
I would prefer that that is not done.
Okay. If you say no, I won't repeat it,
Both
Madam Speaker.
sides.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your
Emergency
cooperation.
spending, Madam Speaker. They said that we took out fat from $12 million, Madam Speaker. We did cover with $12 million, Madam Speaker, approximately 100 roads in this country, Madam Speaker. We hired approximately 40 contractors that never worked for 13 years, Madam Speaker. We utilized a system of road building that is a modern system that was minimally utilized by their government, Madam Speaker. We renegotiated the rates, Madam Speaker, where we are getting approximately $700,000 per mile of hot mix, Madam Speaker, where they have never ever been able to do.
$8 million 1 mile.
Exactly. The fat is in Farber's Road, remember. That's where the fat is. $8 million for 1 mile of road. You want to know where the fat they know? That's where the fat is. Not if they handle like that. Not if they handle like that.
Members.
Sorry, I didn't say anything.
No, both of you.
All right.
We are in the House of Parliament, are we not?
Yes, Madam Speaker. But you have to allow somebody that is being attacked to defend himself factually. The fact is, the sugar roads of this country was not touched for 13 years. I have brothers in here, colleagues in here, that are sugar farmers. I could point them out. One the right side of me, the shaky head. The next one there on the second row. The third one there on the top row. And even the boss of bosses in this house is a sugar cane farmer. Am I right, Prime Minister? They are the ones. Oh, and I forget, the ex-Minister of Lands is also in the agro-productive sector, as far as I understand. He not say much, that he know the truth. The truth is that we invested money where it was needed. And it's not enough, Madam Speaker. So, the Remate Road that he is bringing up is a project that was online. It is not a project that we designed from the start. It is a project that we analyzed that was already in the pipeline, and we decided that it was important. Madam, what do I do, Madam Speaker? Do I listen to this gentleman?
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. Standing order 44.
Madam Speaker, advise me as to what to do.
Irrelevance.
Member, may I hear the point of order?
Thank you,
May
Madam
I hear
Speaker.
Sit down.
Wait, member for Mesopotamia, if this is what it's going to be, I will not allow the point of order.
Madam Speaker.
Don't take advantage of my
Madam
generosity.
Speaker. Standing order 44, Madam Speaker, prevents irrelevance and repetition. So I call to your attention that the member from Kayo South is engaging in repetition and irrelevance in his argument. He persists, Madam Speaker, in tedious repetition of his own arguments or arguments of others, and he should be asked to conclude and the House be adjourned, Madam Speaker.
I'll be minded of that when I hear it on...
Well, the Prime Minister pointed it out for me and you guided me, Madam Speaker, so I would ask that you guide the member from Kayo South. Likewise, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Member for Kayo South.
Madam Speaker, it seems that applications are going in for leader of a party and speaker of the House at the same time, by the same man. That's how I see it. Madam Speaker, I will repeat myself. Emergency funding of $12 million was
just
spent.
say repeat yourself, Madam Speaker. You to give up
Madam
yourself.
Speaker, $12 million was spent when it was never spent before. $12 million built 100 roads. $12 million hired 40 contractors. $12 million was spent legally.
Speaker, this member is really out of order, and if you refuse to discipline him, if he can call me a boy, what if I would call you gal? What if I call you gal and he just want to strike off for the record? That would be the most disrespectful thing. I demand an apology from him, Madam Speaker, and if we don't get that, then we are gone.
Madam Speaker.
Member, I'm standing. I remain standing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
No, Member Pocahontas South.
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Thank you. It's a glorious day.
Member, I'm asking you to please take a seat.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I will put on the record, even though there's only one side of this house here, that I find the parliamentary parlance descending, and on my watch, I will do my darndest not to have that be repeated. I don't find it cute, nor do I find it exemplary, using the terminologies that have been used, some of which I recognize I miss. And for that, I will work on that for future sessions. Terms like boy, legal, references to members other than by their title of their area that they are a member representing is not acceptable parlance. Member for Kaya South, do I assume that you are concluded?
Ma'am, I'm assuming wrong.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it is a glorious day when a party looks across the other side and there is no opposing members. I think we accomplished quite a lot. We have them to 5 and the plan is to have them to 0. But Madam Speaker, the gentleman, the member from College, accused us of spending money illegally. That is wrong, and that's why I am only stating the facts, Madam Speaker. He accused us that we don't know to build roads, that we are building a road and then we have to spend more money to build another road. That's, again, not the fact, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, when a leader of an opposition makes accusations that has no basis on facts, it shows why they are in opposition. It shows why they are leaderless. It shows why they need to learn. It shows why they need to study. It shows why they need to investigate to be able to come to this honorable house and debate on the basis of facts and not political rhetoric. With that, Madam Speaker, I would like to say thank you very much. It was a very difficult presentation to make because I was rudely interrupted countless times, and I thank you for standing up for what is right. Have a good evening, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I will take the liberty of reiterating for the record before I close or ask that the House now adjourn, that for future sessions, there will be a lot more adherence to the spirit and intent of the standing orders, although I admit they are a bit vague. And I will also ask indulgence of both sides of this honorable House to work with me in ensuring that not only point of orders that are being addressed, but to recognize that when 2 members stand, and sometimes 3 at the same time, while I try to put the House in order, it does make it difficult for me to catch what is being said to make a ruling. Perhaps there can be some improvement on this at the future House meeting. Honorable members, the question is that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The House now stands adjourned.